Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from Alex Merced Coder with another video on learning Clojure. So now we're doing functions, and this is a functional programming language. So functions are at the center of how, well, everything works. So, and again, basically in functional programming, you're dealing with pure functions, which means they don't mutate data. So basically the output the function puts out is separate from the parameters that you put in, and the function itself will not modify those parameters in any way. So in that case, the idea is that data is immutable. So let's see here. There's different ways to write a function, and here we have several different ways kind of laid out. So we can go through one by one. So first one here, we're just defining a straight up function. So the way it works is, again, everything is in parentheses. So the first parenthesis starts with defin, meaning defined function. So we're defining a function whose name is hello. That's the name of the function. The function takes a parameter called name. So yes, parameters are in square brackets. And what the function does is print line hello me and the name and the parameter name. Okay, cool. So as you see down here, we call that function hello and we pass in the parameter Alex. So here you don't have to put the parameters in parentheses or brackets or anything. It's just going to be the next thing after you call the function. Okay, so let me run that. Okay, so you'll see the very first thing there is the call to this function, hello Alex, which calls this function, which prints hello me, and then the parameter Alex. So that's one way to define a function. Okay, and then you just call it like so. Okay, now the thing is that you could also have basically more multi-functions in one function. And then what makes them different is that they have different parameters in a sense. So basically, depending on how many parameters it takes, it'll call a different version of the same function. So here we're defining the function messenger. Now, if I don't pass a parameter to messenger, it basically calls on itself. So it's kind of recursive. The function calls the function itself, messenger, except it passes the parameter hello world. Okay, but this version doesn't take a parameter. So there must be another version that takes a parameter. That's this right here. So again, you see here is two sets of parentheses defining both versions of the messenger function. So the function that does take a parameter takes a parameter and prints, well, the parameter, prints message. So if I don't put a parameter, it'll print hello world. If I do give it a parameter, it'll print out whatever I give it. So here we see in the first call to messenger, I don't give it a parameter, so it should just print hello world. And in the second version, I do give it the parameter my name, which means it should just print my name, and that's exactly what you see here. So it runs the first version without the parameter, which then calls this version of the function. And the second one, where I gave it a parameter, runs this version of the function. Cool. So those are cool. Now you can also do variadic functions here as well. Okay, I covered this in my Go videos, and it's basically a function that can take sort of an infinite amount of additional parameters. And the way you do that is I say greeting and who. It doesn't, now again, this could be anything. So it could be Bobby and Joe. But the and symbol, the ampersand, means that the parameter afterwards can be as many items as I'm willing to give it. Okay, so in this case, it's going to print greeting, and then every additional parameter will be passed as who. So let's go to this version of this here, where I call this hello me function, whose parameters are greeting and who. So the very first parameter I pass it, hola, is the greeting. So I gets passed into that. But then all these additional, so there's two additional parameters, because again, two quotation marks. And that both goes into who, so it prints out greeting. So then here's the function where it says print line, greeting and who, or those two variables. So it's going to print hola and who, because it basically takes all these additional parameters and makes a list under the variable name of who. So there you can see that call here. So let's see, it calls hola, Alex Merced, and if I added more, so if I added the best, as a third parameter, or fourth parameter really. So now it's going to say, hola, Alex Merced the best. Okay, whatever's inside. It creates a list of all those additional parameters. Then you can also have a anonymous function, which means you don't give it a name. Okay, so here we're saying we're just naming a function. Okay, that's what the fn stands for. So this is a function. It just means that this is a function. I'm not defining a variable called function. That's what the def stands for, because it's mixing the def, meaning create a variable name, and function, fn. So it's saying, hey, to this variable name, we're going to assign it this function. That's really what that means. Here, we're just creating a function. We're not assigning it to any kind of variable name, which means it's only going to run once. I cannot call the function again later because I have no name to call it. That's what's referred to as a anonymous function. Okay, that's kind of like what arrow functions do in JavaScript. As sort of or a lambda in Python. Okay, so it's just saying this is a function. Okay, it's going to run the message function. So print line message, whatever message returns, hello world. Okay, it's going to print hello world basically. And then you see I call it twice. Okay, so that's pretty much that. There's actually a shorthand version for the anonymous function. So let me go bring that up real quick. Would be the shorthand way of writing a anonymous function. That's this right here. So technically what this piece here does, it fills in the gap of this. So essentially, okay. So again, just to kind of go back over. So basically what we're saying here is we're going to declare in a function, or not defining it, meaning giving it a variable name. It's going to take one parameter, which is message, and it's going to print that message. And then here we give it a parameter, hello world. So essentially the way this reads is this takes the place of this, assuming that there's, and instead it doesn't list the number of parameters. And instead what you do, you use this notation. So technically this %1 represents the first parameter, this %2 represents the second parameter. And again, here's the operator, so it's going to add these two numbers. Okay. So then let's put that in parentheses and give it some parameters. So let's see here. Let's give it 2 and 2. And that should give me 4. Let's make sure. And it gave me 4 right there. Okay, so basically again, we just said, hey, here's a function that's going to add these two numbers. Here are the two numbers I'm going to add. And if I want to assign this anonymous function a variable, I could do that. I could be like, I could go over here and write def a func, okay, meaning a function. And this actually says this variable name, a function, is going to stored inside of it will be this function. Okay, I could do that, take away the parameter. Okay, and then I can just be like a func, hello. And see there, it prints hello. Okay. Essentially doing this is just what this does shorthand. So this just, instead of doing first defining a variable, then assigning it a function, is just saying, hey, we're going to define hello me as this function. So hopefully that gives you the lay of the land for sort of the syntax of functions in Clojure. Okay, I know this can sometimes be a little confusing compared to sort of, the more, like C, C++, Java, JavaScript, all those kind of languages that generally have a very similar syntax. And the reason being is because oftentimes they were influenced by each other. And there's actually a good lecture on that. There's actually a lecture by a Clojure developer on this, which is called like, why is functional programming not the norm? Or why is object-oriented programming the norm? And it's a really great story. It just tells a story sort of how all these languages influence each other. So basically it was just because somebody saw a cover of a magazine that it covered Smalltalk that they borrowed object-oriented features from Smalltalk into Objective-C and C++, And then Java wanted to compete with C++, so it borrowed from C++. Microsoft wanted to compete with Java, so it created C Sharp. And JavaScript wanted to compete with, wanted to take advantage of Java's sort of hotness at the time, so they named themselves JavaScript and borrowed from Java, which is why all these languages basically all these languages trying to borrow from the momentum of another language, they all ended up having very similar syntax. Okay, well, like languages like Lisp, Erlang, Haskell had very different syntaxes, and languages that their lineage has very different syntax. This being a language that's based on Lisp. So, history is interesting and quite illuminating. But I'll see you guys in the next video.